All right, well, we got it. The Saturn IV Ultra. It's been a while since I've been so excited for a 3D printer, and I was actually going to buy this myself. It is that interesting, but thankfully I haven't had to do that. One of the great privileges of having your own YouTube channel is manufacturers want to see their stuff displayed and used on it. So thank you, Elegoo, for sending this over. Thank you everyone who left comments expressing that they would like to see this here on the channel. Now, since this printer is more or less built exactly the same, bar one or two features, as the Saturn IV, anything that is the same, I'm not going to cover again here since I've already covered it in my Saturn IV video. So what I'm really going to focus on here is the differences. And we're going to dive into some stuff in this video that I promise you've not seen in any other Saturn IV video. So buckle up, grab some popcorn or fried skulls or something, I don't know. And yeah, let's just tuck right into this thing. So the inclusions with the Saturn IV Ultra are identical to the Saturn IV, bar two items. So you're also going to get a Wi-Fi dongle with this machine because it has Wi-Fi, which is cool. So we will play around with that and see how that goes. And then you also get this monstrosity, the bloody bib tray, which I have some thoughts on already, but I guess no, I'm not going to use this because I have a process already, which if you watch this channel, you know, and we'll get to that. And I'll explain why I think this is dumb. But yeah, this is a thing that comes with it. I also got the mini heater. I wish I had this in time for the video I just put out on heating. In that video, we learned that brewer belts and blower heaters are very effective solutions for heating resin 3D printers. And I do recommend checking that video out if you haven't seen it yet. Especially if you were thinking of spending some big bucks on a machine that comes with an inbuilt heater, because I personally think that's a waste of money. But yeah, we'll dive into this as well. We'll run through how that works and all that stuff, and we'll test it. We're smack bang in the middle of winter here in Australia, which doesn't really mean much. The average temperature outside overnight is like between 5 and 10 degrees C, which I think is about 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah, okay, that's not as cold as your winter, I know. But it's cold enough to make a resin print fail. Okay, so we'll try that out. All right, so on the exterior of this machine, the front's identical. This side is identical. The hinges are identical. The swingy door is magnificent, obviously. The back is identical. You know, you've got your port here for the extraction system, which is great. I'll get that set up here in a minute. And then the only difference on the exterior of the machine is right here. It's the same as the Saturn IV, except we now have this little Wi-Fi antenna connection. And so that literally just screws on like that. And you can bend it up out of the way, and it's ready to go. When you open the Saturn IV, it's packed a little bit differently to the other Saturn IV in that the build plate is actually bolted in with these little hex bolts, and they've included a nice chunk of foam here to hold this thing in place, because when the machine is turned off, this actually can be manipulated. I mean, it's a bit stiff, but maybe I've permanently broken it now. Oh no, there we go. Yeah, so when the machine is off, you can manipulate that, that tilt function manually like this. But otherwise, the VAT design is identical. Everything is identical. The dual linear rails, the Z-rod, the build plate. You know, you got this like squishy and compressible build plate. You got this cool latch. You got that nice laser etch pattern. It's all identical, which is great. So other than the tilting VAT, the only other thing in here exclusive to this machine is the AI camera. I guess we'll play around with that. I personally do not care at all for cameras in resin 3D printers. I'd rather pay less for a printer that doesn't come with one, to be honest. But if you like having a camera in your printer, well, there you go, you got one. And apparently this can detect failures and stuff, which dubious. How do we even test that? I don't know. But yeah, so that's the thing. Oh, do watch out for this little rubber cap. This will give you a really shit time, and I'll tell you how. One of the guys on my Discord, MZ Gaming, was having an issue with their Saturn IV Ultra where the prints were only partially sticking to the build plate. And so it looked like the auto leveling was failing, which is something that I speculated could happen with this machine. And actually on that note, I do have something to show you. Someone else's machine actually has failed in this way already, and I'll share that with you soon. But in MZ's case, literally what had happened is this little rubber cap here had become trapped at the base of the Z tower here, just below the linear rails. And so what would happen is, as the build plate comes down, this was getting jammed up under here somewhere, and it wasn't allowing this to make proper contact inside the vat there. And so it was failing leveling, and that was due to a mechanical obstruction. Which, interesting that his onboard sensors didn't detect something was wrong, but there's only so much that those sensors can figure out, I guess. But yeah, so do watch out for that if you buy a Saturn IV Ultra, that the lens cap, if it's not on your AI camera, it might be somewhere where you don't want it to be. Interestingly, the latch on this one feels a lot easier, a lot less stiff than my Saturn IV. So next thing here, literally we're just gonna pull out these screws. There's our other one there. So now, yep, we can remove our vat, and we can see it's got a clear FEP, which is good. Same as the other one, max fill line on the back, but not on the front. I do actually quite like these thumb screws. So that drops in there. Screw that down, and done. All right, let's talk about heaters. So on the Saturn IV, I was able to use this heat belt to great effect. And on the Saturn IV, I was actually able to route this underneath the like the vat screws here at the bottom of the vat. And that's not gonna be possible here because of how close, you see this? Because of how close the wall of the vat is to the lip of this like cavity. So it's not gonna work. But shout out to my fellow YouTube content creator, Battle Brother Sam, as he, in a recent video that I saw, did successfully install a fermentation belt on this exact build plate, and he just wrapped it around the top, and it was, by all accounts, successful. And so I'm gonna try the same thing here with my brewer's belt. I'll just wrap that around, and yeah, look at that. You see this? So right now the vat is in the fully down position, and I'm able to wrap this belt completely around the thing. And so if I lift it up, I just hold this tight around and then lower it. Yeah. It seems to be quite quite tricky to do. Sometimes it wants to go up and down, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, this fits nicely around in both positions. So yeah, brewer's belt, not a problem. Any cubic heater, that's gonna be pushing it. All right, yep, you can get it into the back left corner, right in front of the vent port. However, you would not be able to put it in the right corner because of the AI camera. Yeah, there's no way that's gonna fit on the right, like it did on the Saturn IV. Let's now delve into the new Elegoo Mini Heater. This is exciting. I'm always stoked to see any new solution or product targeted at heating resin 3D printers, because I never hear the end of it. How we need printers with inbuilt heaters. We need to my prints keep failing. Why are they failing? Oh, it's really cold. Okay, so this comes with a power supply. They have given me, I believe that's a US one. That's okay, I've got plenty of AU ones, not a big deal. Comes with a 24 volt, 5 amp power supply. This is interesting. A bracket, which attaches to, it looks like the existing Fume Extraction port. So we'll see what that's about. There's also 2 little cartridges, which I believe these are full of carbon. This is the outward facing side, you see? And yeah, I think, can I just pop that open? Is that a thing? Dare I? Probably gonna break it. I feel like I'm gonna break, oh no, here we go. Aha, okay. Yeah, so there's a block of carbon in there and a little foam cover. Is my camera focusing, or does my camera hate me today? Come on, buddy. Little block of foam, yeah, and block of carbon. And then behind that carbon is another little sheet of foam. So that's easy enough, isn't it? So is this one and a spare, or do they both get installed? All right, so on the device itself, there's your power in on the back, some kind of button, maybe power. Looks like the heating element is in the top. Maybe this is where air is drawn in. Screen on the front, and then some grills on the side. Maybe exhaust, who knows? Oh, and on the bottom, another port here. And so this, I believe, aha, we got another one of those little guys. All right, so you get one filter already installed and 2 spares. Cool. Don't count on that. Please blast your fumes outside. Okay, so already I've identified something about this I don't really love. And that is, so when you install this plate, 2 things are gonna happen. One, it's going to eliminate your ability to install some kind of fume extraction. But 2, this plate also serves, oh, and by the way, this plate is what's giving you access to the power button and the power in. But yeah, this plate also serves to elevate the heater off of the ground, giving access to this fan on the bottom. Now, is this purely just for the smell and the carbon filter, or is the air that's drawn in here work its way all the way up through this device and out the top here? Or is it the other way? Is it drawn in here and comes out the bottom here? So let's plug it in and see what happens. Okay, moment of truth. Power in. And then I'm gonna press the button. And there we go. Okay, so you hear this? This is noisy like the Chitu Systems one. Let me do a quick side-by-side for you, actually, because that's something I failed to do in the last video, actually, is I commented on the Chitu Systems fan being noisy, but then I didn't actually demonstrate that for you, did I? Perils of, I don't know, YouTube. Motherfucker. It's so much mess here. Okay, all right, so they're both equal distance from my microphone. I'm now going to disconnect the Elegoo, and we will listen to the Chitu Systems. It's actually heaps quieter by comparison. Hang on, let me turn up the... There we go. Okay, yeah, so this one has an idle state and then like an active state. So you can hear the volume level of this now. And I'll cut back to this. And then back to this. Which one's louder? Okay. Thank you, Chitu Systems. Affiliate links in the description. All right, so yeah, this is the current ambient temperature around the device. It's blowing hot air from the top. Well, not hot, right now it's warm, I would say. And yeah, I believe it's pulling air. It's pulling air mostly from the sides, that's good. The bottom, not so much. You can really hear it struggle when I cover those sides. All right, so that's good to know. That means I'm quite happy to place that just flat against the bottom of the machine. But interesting that it's blowing hot air up. I guess if it heats up, let me turn this off. I guess if it heats up the chamber, that's the main thing, right? That's what matters. But yeah, I'm gonna forego this because I want to vent the fumes, which means we're gonna have to run the power in another way, which is not a big deal. You can just run it like in under the door like that. It's not a big deal. It's a bit jank, but if you really wanted to, I guess you could like cut out a little notch for the cable. But yeah, I think you'll be fine just doing that. That's how I ran my heating tests on the last video, and it was fine. Bloody hell, I almost forgot. There's actually no adjustment, no settings at all on this. It has one setting and that English. It has one setting and that's it. Yeah, so this device is going to try and heat up its surroundings to 25 degrees C and maintain it at 25 degrees C, which, interesting. Is that going to be as effective as the Chitu and Anycubic solutions, which let you go as high as 40 degrees? Is this going to be as effective in colder environments, like sub-zero environments? That would be really interesting to see. I suppose it would be, but yeah. Yeah, I really want to see some of my peers in colder environments where it does snow and get below zero to conduct the same experiments I did and try the different methods and see what works. You know, I only have so many of these, buddy. That's the spicy hay. Nope. All right, so got my fume extraction coupling set up on the back of the printer here. That was really easy. And I really love that Elegoo are starting to do this same port on all their printers. It's really, really great. By the way, this is free, link in the description. There's a video as well. Highly recommend checking it out if you're not familiar with it yet. It's a good little system. Some people criticize it, saying that, you know, you shouldn't pull the fumes straight from the printer, but you should put the printer in an enclosure and then pull the fumes from that. And yeah, that's a great use case. And in the video where I first talk about this system, I do mention that you could like vent your whole cabinet or whatever with this setup. But what's cool about this is you can move it between multiple sources of fumes if you're kind of spread out and don't have everything in the same place like I do. So I can move this over to my wash and cure station and then vent the fumes over there, or vent it directly at the printer while the printer's in use. Or if the printer's been sitting for a while and I need to open it up, I can hook this up first, pull out all the fumes, and then yeah. That's why I call it the versatile quick disconnect fume extraction system. Works a treat. So with that installed and our handle installed, here's the back of our printer where our heater is going to go. And so that's just going to sit in front of the fume extractor. And later on in this video, I'm going to take this printer outside and I will run a print with this heater. And when I do, I won't be using the fume extractor, where instead I'll be closing off this machine using these covers, which are also free and come with the latest version. Go download it on MakerWorld. There's also the triangle and the orc, but the orc is a member exclusive. Gotta make money somehow. So what I want to do now is I want to take a look at the thing I am most excited about for the Saturn IV Ultra, and that is the firmware and specifically resin exposure calibration. Oh my God, Elegoo finally built it into one of their machines. Now, if you saw my Saturn IV video, you know I was absolutely livid that it wasn't present in that machine. When you've got two machines that look basically identical and then they only put that firmware in one of them, oh, I was so pissed. I was so pissed. Now, some of you were quick to point out that that could be because they're using different motherboards, which would make sense, but then also they could just program it, right? If they've got programmers, surely you could just program it. Anyway, one of the things I want to do in this video is actually take both machines apart and actually look at the main boards for each, and we'll see just how different are they. I'm sure they are different because this one has Wi-Fi, but still, I think that'd be an interesting thing to have a look at. You know, why does this have cool firmware and the Saturn IV doesn't? Doesn't seem right. Because if Elegoo are doing that purely as a way to upsell you on this machine, that sucks, honestly. I don't like that at all. I mean, Anycubic give you their version of the exposure calibration tool, RERF, on basically all of their machines ever since the dawn of Anycubic, which is great. And before you get in the comments and bitch at me about how it makes complete sense to have one machine with better features cost more, I get that and I agree. You should differentiate your more expensive premium machines with better features, but a resin exposure calibration feature in the firmware is so simple in its operation. It's so fucking basic, but it is so incredibly useful. You know, if you've watched this channel, I feel like I talk about it every single video because it is just so goddamn excellent to get you up and running as quick as possible and just reduce the friction for resin 3D printing. This feature is a must-have, and there's no excuse for any printer to not have it. Even the cheapest, crappiest printer can have this feature. If there's an LCD and a UV light, you can program this in. It's easy. Every printer should have it. Like, fair enough, features like recovery on power loss, which requires onboard memory, sure, make that a premium upselling feature, but exposure calibration, put it in all of them, for fuck's sake. But yeah, let's dive into this thing's hot new feature. I'm more excited about this than the tilt thing, but we'll have a look at that as well, obviously. All right, so like the other one, yeah, this one's got a bunch of onboard sensors, so it's gonna do its little pre-flight check, which is cool. I am a big fan of these new sensors that are getting built into resin 3D printers. It's very cool when they can detect things like rogue cured debris in the vat in the way of the build plate. That's going to save a lot of people a lot of headaches with their LCDs. I'm glad the Saturn IV includes that, at least. Also, theoretically, it can tell you when you run out of resin or if you've got too much resin. So, yeah, very cool. Now, let's dive into this. Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, so you've got onboard memory, right? Which that's another thing this machine can do that the Saturn IV can't do, which is recovery on power loss. Presumably, when you go to print something from the USB, it also copies it to the local onboard storage. You've also got history. That's cool. Settings. You've got Wi-Fi settings. No Wi-Fi detected. searching for Wi-Fi. Cool. So I'll just connect this to my Wi-Fi real quick. Touchscreen is a bit shit, and it was the same on the other one. I really struggle with these. Whatever LCD they've used in this machine and the other one, it's like hit detection is terrible. And I don't think that's a result of like the small icons. I think it's just literally, it just doesn't always register when you touch it. It's a pain in the ass. Actually, after watching this back, I'm pretty sure this is just an issue of fat, inaccurate fingers v tiny little buttons, as the hit detection on this LCD seems to be fine. But I really did struggle with it on the other Saturn 4 machine. And what you'll see here soon, when I rip these two machines apart, is they actually do use entirely different touchscreens, as well as some other stuff. Spoiler warning. There we go. All right, connecting. That took a minute. Now I believe we're going to be able to connect to that in Chitubox Basic, which we'll check out in a second. Print modes. Oh, cool. Okay, high speed and low speed. I'll just leave that on high speed. Okay, tools. There it is. Screen exposure, LCD. Nice to see you. I will get to you in a second. Yeah, all the other stuff is the same. Oh wait, no, that's resin calibration. So this one is just the mask, so you can like quickly test if your screen's working. Oh, this is cool. They've given you some options now. You can do a grid. Oh, look at that. How cool is that? You got a grid. You've also got full screen, and then the Elegoo logo, like we've seen on their other machines. So that's nice. That's a nice little way just to quickly diagnose that your UV light and your LCD and the internal fan, which we can hear, are all working correctly, which is a nice diagnostic thing to have. Printers that don't do that, obviously you can just slice a file, plug that in, start printing it, and you can watch the LCD without a tank and without a build plate installed, and you can see if it's masking and doing everything correctly. But yeah, to have that built in, love that. Good job, Elegoo. This firmware is shaping up to be bloody nice. Now let's do the fun thing. Resin calibration. Holy shit. So excited. So my understanding is the way this works is it'll break the screen down into 4 quadrants, and we need to load up our own print file, not worrying about the settings in the slicer, but just positioning it at each quadrant. Now, I had a lovely chat the other day with Mr. Fohammer, and we got to talking about all the different options on the market right now, and of course we talked about the Saturn 4 printers, and he actually pointed out to me that if you press this little button here, you can change it from 4 tests up to 6, and if you press it again, you can actually change it to 8 tests. So that is really cool. So I think what we'll do at this point, since we need a file, is we're going to jump into Chitubox, add this printer, choose a calibration file, and start playing around with this. Okay, here we are in Chitubox Basic, and I've added the Saturn 4 Ultra. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly jump into the settings, and right off the bat, one of the benefits here to this tilt release mechanism is basically half of the settings you normally would see with a resin 3D printer have just been axed. And so that's good, I think. That's less for new users to become overwhelmed and confused by. I mean, even though with resin printing, there's really only 1 or 2 settings you got to worry about. The rest you can generally, in my experience, for like what we're doing in printing miniatures, you can just leave alone. But yeah, this is super cool. I'm going to make a couple of changes here because for right now, I don't want to print anything. I just want to dive into this calibration thing and get a good understanding of it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to reduce my bottom layer count to just 1 so we can get it out of the way nice and quickly. And that's cool. It's giving me a warning saying like, hey, that's a dumb idea, which it is if we were actually printing, but we're not. And I'm just going to set this to something super low, like 2.5. So that way our first and only bottom layer will print super quick, and then we can observe what the calibration does, which, that's what I'm really keen to see. So I'm going to hit apply. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a calibration part that has numbers on it so we can figure out these zones and see really clearly what's going on here. So I have here this custom cones of calibration file that I put together recently, and you can see here this has some numbering on it, which is, going to be super convenient for our purposes here. I'm going to start by putting number 1 in this corner, and then we'll put number 2 over here, number 3 there, and number 4 there, and we'll see how that goes. And because I don't want to wait for these first 20 layers before I see those numbers, I'm actually going to sync all of these down slightly. There we go. So we've got 10 layers, 10 or 11 layers of numbers now, which we're going to be able to see straight away. Okay, now to use the wireless, we have to install Chitu Manager, I believe. So I'm going to do that real quick. Here we go. Add printer. Scanning the network, and it's found it. Excellent. That was easy. We can enable time lapse here. I'm going to do that. That's pretty cool. Good stuff. So now we can do surveillance. Look at that. That's a flattering look at my studio, isn't it? Let's close that. You don't need to see that. Can access the history. We can view files on the device, the internal storage. That's pretty cool. Yeah, this is pretty nice. This might be the first Wi-Fi implementation on a resin 3D printer that so far I'm not pissed off at or confused by, which is good. Okay, so now I believe we can slice this and then network sending, click on that, then we can choose our Saturn 4 Ultra here and send it. Is it that easy? Hell yeah. Okay, can I now print it from the printer? It says waiting. Oh, okay. File transferring. Completed. Oh, look at that. Print. Hell yeah. We're actually going to cancel this print because we want to do the exposure calibration. This is just going to print them all at the same time, which is not very good. So let me just stop this. Confirm. Like the Saturn, the homing sensor is all the way in the top here, which can be a bit annoying. But yeah, I'm going to talk more about this homing sensor and this whole setup in a bit because there's some interesting stuff and some problems that people are already running into that you might want to know about. We're going to do our test with 4 parts first. And so I think we just click this little plus icon and then go local file. And there we go. There's our 4 test models. Grab those, hit import. Okay, that's easy enough. And then we've got some default values here. So 2.3, 1.8, 2.8, and 2.5. Bit weird. Now this could be a big advantage. This could also be a pain in the ass. We can actually set each of these values manually here on the printer. Part of me thinks like this is going to be really time consuming and annoying. Whereas like Anycubics one, it just defaults to a 1/4 second interval difference between each. So you pick the first, say it's like 2 seconds, and then the next one will be 2.25, and then 2.5, 2.75, and so on. This way though, you've got to manually do each one. However, the benefit here is you could do a really wide range to begin with. You could start on the low end, say like 1.5 seconds, and then on the high end, you could go all the way up to like 3 seconds. And that's loosely going to tell you where in that range your resin sits. And then you can do a follow-up print with more fine granularity, say, for example, between 2.5 and 3 seconds. So this is more capable, but potentially just a bit more frustrating to set up, but we'll go through and do it now, see how we go. Okay, welcome back to another day for you and me in paradise. I ended up sort of spinning my wheels on the setup yesterday, and then I had to head out. So rather than subject you to that, I will now run through this now that I somewhat know how it works. So something that tripped me up yesterday right before I had to go was the way you enter these values. So you can tap on each one and then input the amount of time you would like to expose for that particular test part. But the way you have to do it is number 1 is the highest value, and then number 4 would be the lowest. It actually won't let you do it any other way. So right now, the way this is set up is number 1 is 3 seconds, and then number 2 is 2.5, and then 3 is 2, and then 4 is 1.5. So yeah, that's a perfectly sensible starting range for most resins you might encounter for printing minis in. So I've loaded up the file that we just sliced. So let's hit print and see what we get. So what we should see is these disappear one after the other. So it looks like we've got 1 here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so number 1 disappears first. So number 1 is the shortest exposure, which means on the settings, it's number 4, I think. Yeah, because it disappears first. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, which means, yeah, it's 4, 3, 2, 1. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, doing it that way, I'm actually happy to leave the models like that because that's what I'm used to. When I do the Anycubic RERF test, my test number 1 is the lowest exposure value. So that, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Stoked! And here's what the layout for 6 tests looks like. There we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this is the layout for 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So basically when you're looking at this in the slicer, you want the front towards you or toward the bottom of the screen, and then the tests move in rows from left to right. And so if you wanted your number 8 test to be the lowest value and do it in reverse, then you would just go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like that. Pretty straightforward. Okay, well, there you have it. You saw it here first. These have wildly different motherboards, which I guess was to be expected. So on the right, that right there is the Saturn IV, and over here on the left, that is the Saturn IV Ultra. Let's take a closer look. So despite having different motherboards, there is still obviously a ton of overlap. They both have identical daughter boards. The black one on the right, as you can see here, is the same. They obviously both use the same LCD, same UV light source, etc, etc. There's a close-up there of the Saturn IV Ultra, and there's the Saturn IV. So really, the two things missing from this machine that this one is benefiting from is recovery on power loss and exposure calibration. And so what's your take? Do you think Elegoo have committed a faux pas against the 3D printing community here by giving us these features in this printer but not that one? Or is this justified because they're using different mainboards? My take is all of the new printers this generation should have come with at least the calibration tool, and then maybe recovery on power loss could be a benefit to the Ultra. But yeah, what do you think? Let me know. And based on those firmware features, which of these printers would you be inclined to buy? I'm guessing it's this one, right? Because just exposure calibration is just so good. So good. I hate not having it. So here's the front panel off of the Saturn IV, and that right there is the touchscreen, which we can see, interestingly, is actually different to the touchscreen on the Saturn IV Ultra. So that's good to know. Different motherboards and different touchscreens. But I noticed even the motherboards share some DNA, like this chip here, for example, WIL-NX17. And there it is again. I couldn't find much on that, so I don't know. But maybe these close-ups of the boards will be helpful to someone more knowledgeable who may be watching. Maybe you can infer some things that I can't. Here's a better look at the Saturn IV Ultra board, because it's got this stacked PCB thing. I wanted to pull that out and see if it's got that big chip hiding in behind it on the other side that we see on the Saturn IV motherboard here. But it's not there. So is the WL-NX17 chip the CPU? Is that like the main brain on both of these boards? Because if it is, and I'm speculating, surely it wouldn't have been too hard to get this one working in the same way as the Ultra, right? Now, I know there are some really, really smart people who watch this channel who have a ton more experience in this kind of thing than I do. Electronics, programming, product research and development, and I would absolutely love to get your input here. I've already spoken to a couple of software people, and they're of the opinion that the hardware isn't the limitation here. They should technically be able to just program the same features in. But yeah, would love all the opinions and input and experience related to this here, because I don't know. Elegoo, if you're watching this, which I doubt, I have a feeling that the social media people at these companies just have a look at the comments on these videos to see what the sentiment is, but they don't actually watch the videos. But if by some chance someone from Elegoo is watching, if you don't want to do the work on the programming front, could you please open source these products like you did with the Mars printers? At least I think those are open source. Open source it and just let the community deal with it. That would be the best way, I think. We so badly need that in the resin 3D printing space. I think there is a open source resin 3D printer project, but it needs to be the norm like it is in FDM printing. Like, it's so cool that we've got like Clipper and all, Octoprint and all this shit, Marlin or whatever, G-Code. It's all open source in the FDM world, and that's amazing. And I would love to see that here in the resin space as well. And yeah, I think Elegoo, if you are paying attention, please do it with these new Saturns. That would be incredible. But yeah, any company that takes the charge on that, I would be so impressed with. But anyway, let's move on. And also, while we've got things open here, there's that tilt release mechanism, which is pretty cool. Right, let's print some shit. Sunlu, ABS-like, my queen. Affiliate link down below. I love this resin. This is great. I prefer the toughness one. Where's that? I like this one better, toughness, but you can't beat the ABS-like for value. This stuff really is great. So, right, let's get this in there. I'm guessing you only fill it up to the max fill line if the vat is in the up position, but right now mine's actually in the down position. But either way, I don't have enough resin left in this bottle to get anywhere close to that max fill line, so we're fine. But yeah, curious. Got my Death to the Sprue, the Defiant, as it's lovingly called, handle installed from the once in a six side handles for 3D printers with swingy neglected door. Oh, I forgot. Patreon.com, buymeacoffee.com. Death to the Sprue. Oh, this is cool. New version detected. Upgrade now. That is cool. I do love a machine that can update itself over the air. All right, so I've gone ahead and prepared our calibration test print, and I'm going with 8 tests, and I believe we're probably going to find that the ideal value for this resin is somewhere around 2.5 seconds. And I'm using J3D Tech's boxes of calibration for this one because I've been hearing about this forever and I want to give it a go, so let's try this out. And I've just quickly in Blender spent a little bit of time making sure that each one of these has a distinct and easily legible number on it so that I can keep track of and tell these all apart at the end. Okay, lightning quick Blender tutorial, because I know people are going to ask me how to do this, so let's just do it right now. File, import, STL, locate the model that you want to edit, import STL, add text, and then you'll see if you zoom in, there's like a little bit of text there. Actually, you know what? On second thought, this has taken too long, so I'm going to put it in another video. It'll probably be unlisted, and you can find a link in the video description to the rest of this if you want to know how to do it. Good luck, Godspeed. Okay, so yeah, I got to manually set this up. So what I want to do here is 8 tests, and we want to start at, let's go 3 seconds. And our lowest one, let's go 1.25. Let's go 1 point. We've got 8 tests, so let's go 2.2. This is actually so annoying. 2.4. 1. Hang on, no. That should be 2.2. This should be. Yeah, this is why this is kind of annoying, right? Because like I would prefer it just automatically set an interval between them, I think. Because like, yeah, this kind of, I don't like this. It's kind of a bit of an admin job, isn't it? So 2, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and then this will be 0.4, 2.4, and then 2.5, 2.6, and 2.7. All right, cool. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, so that's a pretty tight range. It's probably in there based off of my experience with this resin on other machines. It's going to be annoying if it's not in there. Maybe I should do a wider spread. Maybe I should start at like 1.8 and then go 2. This fucking touchscreen. Why is that jumped to 29 seconds? 2, 1.8, 2, and then this will be 2.2, so we'll do a 0.2 second increment, and then this will be 2.4, 2.4, and then this will be 2.26, nope, that didn't work, 2.6, yes, 2. Yeah, the amount of user error that this is susceptible to is not super inspiring. 2.8, 6, 8, and then this will be 3, and this will be 3.2. Okay, there we go. That's a good range, I think. 1.8 to 3.2, moving up in 0.2 second increments. Yeah, I've always found the quarter second increment you get off of Anycubic's ref to be plenty sufficient. Like I've always been able to dial in an exposure value that I'm really happy with for each resin I've used when using that 0.25 second increment on Anycubics. So this should be more than good enough. Let's send it. All right, you ready? Worst build plate of 2024 going in. Auto leveling is cool, but I hate this design. Such a bitch to clean. Go on, get in there. Good job. I do not look forward to cleaning that. All right, let's talk about why tilt release is really cool. So right now we're doing our burn-in layers for our calibration test print. So these layers are going to be pretty slow. I think I've got it set to 35 seconds. But once those are done, the duration of our normal print layer is going to be a lot quicker compared to any other machine. Even like some of the machines now with these like vroom profiles coming from factory, like the new Anycubic M7 Pro, I believe, is tuned to do it, as well as the M5S Pro, I think, can do it, and Creality have their version of that they call Dynax. But why this is arguably way better is because this essentially deletes half the settings normally that come with a resin 3D printer. Settings that, in my experience, I find just confuse people who are new to resin 3D printing and aren't settings that on average anyone ever really has to change when all we're doing is just printing miniatures with pretty forgiving resins. So the fact that now like a bunch of those settings are gone, I think is just a big benefit from this, but also the way this is interacting with each layer. So with resin 3D printers, when you have cured resin between the FEP and the build plate, it's stuck to both, and so there's this little tug of war. The build plate lifts up, it wants to bring the FEP with it until that FEP snaps back down and releases, as hopefully the build plate has won the little tug of war and is still holding onto the models that are printing and not the FEP. But yeah, because it's pulling directly straight up, those peel forces are potentially pretty extreme and not evenly distributed across the entire build plate. For example, models on the edge of the build plate might be experiencing different peel forces to those at the center. And so what's really great about this is as it's dropping down only on one side and essentially peeling or rolling away, it's the same as if you could imagine like peeling up some tape, some sticky tape. If you tried to pull it all up at once, it's going to be really difficult. But if you grab it at one end and you lift it up, drawing it away at an angle, it's going to release a lot easier. And it's the exact same thing here. And so basically the peel forces being exerted on your prints are, in theory, reduced considerably, which is super fantastic. In addition to being able to print a whole bunch quicker, that also possibly means that you can get away with daintier and wispier supports. But I really hope anyone who does pre-supports professionally doesn't make this their standard, because the problem with doing pre-supports for a huge audience of people with all different kinds of printers and resins is you can't pre-support a model to the absolute extreme of what's possible with the best printing setups and resins and everything else environment out there. You just can't do that. You have to have a middle ground that's going to work for the most amount of people. That's why I get so pissed off when people release pre-supported models that just have the most nothing supports. You blow on them and they disappear. They're so thin and virtually non-existent. But I'm getting off track. So yeah, this is potentially super cool. A great innovation to see, but you are kind of enrolling to be a beta tester with this machine. If you do get it, I think you'd be wiser to wait a generation or two and make sure any potential issues with this have been ironed out. And you certainly don't need the tilt release. I like being able to print a little bit faster is nice, but honestly, when using a resin 3D printer, in my experience, it's rarely something you ever notice, how fast a print prints. They're kind of set and forget machines. Usually the way they end up fitting into your day-to-day life is you might start a print before you go to bed or before you go to work, and generally then it doesn't really matter how long it takes. And for most miniatures too, those prints are going to be just a couple of hours anyway, so shaving off a half hour or 40 minutes, unless you're a print farm doing mass production or something, you're probably not really going to see the benefit of a machine that goes faster. And we've been printing forever, obviously without tilt release on every other machine, so don't feel like you have to have this or whatever. I think the real interesting part of this machine is the fact that it has this exposure calibration thing that we're doing right now, and also a swingy door, which I talked at length at in my Saturn IV video. Oh, and it's also 100% worth mentioning that you don't have to use a resin that's been specifically formulated to be a fast resin, which typically those are super low viscosity resins. They run almost like water. So with this machine, you don't need that, which is good because those resins, in my experience, are the absolute worst. They are just horrifically brittle. With the tilt release, you can print fast with any resin at all, which is, super cool. And finally, another benefit to the tilt release may just be less wear and tear on your FEP, giving it a bit more longevity. All right, print is done. Looks like we had some splashing. That sucks. I want to show you a really cool print I found on MakerWorld. and I'll leave a link in the video description to where you can pick this up. It's totally free. And this prints entirely without supports. You just print it on this face here. And what this allows you to do, hang on, I'm gonna raise this up a bit, maybe a lot. Okay, and what this is gonna let us do is basically put this here and then tilt our build plate. Oh no, okay, hang on. It's a bit messy. Shit. Maybe put this in first. Yeah, there we go, okay. Whatever. So that's gonna let us now effectively drain off that build plate. And that's weird. We've only got a couple of test models here. You seeing this? That sucks. So we got to do a vat clean and I guess up the burn-in time and run that again. How annoying. Okay, well here's a good opportunity to try something. One of you, and I'll see if I can find it and put it on screen here. One of you recently recommended that instead of using leftover supports to do the vat clean as like the little handle to lift out the sheet, is you can actually use paper. So I'm gonna give this a go. Because what should happen is if you like fold the paper and you put this down in the LCD, it should soak up resin and then that'll cure, and then hopefully, yeah, you can just use this to lift out the cured resin. So we'll give it a go. It's an interesting idea. I hope it works, because then we don't have to keep cured resin around, which is pretty cool. So we'll just put it in, push it down, and I might have to get in there with my finger. There we go. Pretty sure that's good. And then now run our tank clean. So yeah, really keen to see if this works. Okay, let's get this out of the way. And yeah, let's see if this worked. Oh my god, that's fucking cool. Dude, nice. That is a fucking hot tip. Love that. I really hope I can find your comment. You deserve all the credit for this. This is great. Dude. Nicely done. So, check this out. Yeah, these parts are barely sticking to this build plate. Oh, and shout out to J3D Tech, not only for boxes of calibration, but for this tool right here for print removal. I've been going down the J3D Tech rabbit hole, and this is one of the things he recommends. And I completely forgot I had one of these. This came with a printer a while ago. I don't remember which one, but yeah, I've had this in a drawer, and goddamn, look at that. Look at that shit. Amazing. Thank you, J3D Tech. I'm thinking of doing a whole video on like different tools for removing prints, like a shootout, which is the best. But yeah, this so far is sick. Let me know if you want to see that video. I'll make it anyway, even if we've already found a winner. So yeah, all we got to do here, I believe, is up our burn-in time. Now, thankfully, the calibration tool has remembered my last settings, so we don't have to go type all that shit in again, thankfully. However, I think we are gonna have to re-slice this with a new burn-in time, because it did say something about how we can't change settings on the last print. So, yep, I can't change any settings. So we're gonna cancel that. We're gonna go back to the computer, re-slice it, and then we can do it. So that's a bit of a mess about, but whatever, not too big a deal. Print complete. 33 minutes. Hopefully this time we got some stuff on there. So let's take a look. Excellent. Okay, yeah, I see all 8 tests. All right, let's talk about the bib. So Elegoo obviously include this bib, so you can like slide this over the machine here, and then when you pull the build plate out, this is going to catch drips. And they've done that because they've opted to give you this monstrosity of a build plate as a trade-off for self-leveling, because they've made the build plate squishy and compressible rather than the LCD mount, which I guess in this case they couldn't because of the tilt mechanism. But yeah, unfortunately with this machine and the Saturn 4, and it looks like the new Mars 5 machines as well, you get this type of build plate, which yeah, I don't love. But yeah, the reason I think you don't need this, at least for the vast majority of prints, is because something like this is much better. This is like a water catch thingy that you put underneath pot plants. You just get these from the hardware store. This was like $5 and it's made of a UV resistant plastic. And these are so great because you just put it in underneath your build plate. And then as you pull your build plate out, you just bring that with you. And then all the drips go onto that tray, which is great. So anyway, looks like we've got all of our calibration parts, which is great to see. So increasing our burn-in time was all we had to do there. All right, so I'm gonna pop these off. get them cleaned up, and then we'll see if one of these has given us our exposure value. And yeah, as you can see, like unfortunately, as a result of this build plate design, we're losing a ton of resin here, which I'll see if I can get this back in the machine, but yeah, here's what it is. I think, yeah, me personally, I'd rather have a machine that doesn't have self-leveling in favor of an easier to clean build plate. Because yeah, obviously leveling resin 3D printers, at least most of the time, is super easy. There's only a couple of printers that I've run into where it has been a bit of a pain in the ass. I increased the burn-in here all the way up to 60 seconds, and these are still coming away very easily, but also this tool is just absolutely epic for this job. Alright, so I got all our little boxes washed up, and as you can see here, hopefully, each one has a pretty legible little number in there, which is good. This one's number 2. So that right there should be our lowest value at, I think, what do we do, 1.8 seconds? And we can see we've got a few of those pillars, but we're missing 4 it looks like, and then probably another 4 of them aren't really formed properly. So I had a chat with Derek, the guy behind this calibration part, and J3D Tech, and it's interesting, he has gone super deep on the topic of calibration, which is really cool. As far as I know, I think he had a big role in the development of cones of calibration, and yeah, this is his calibration part. And he actually recommends you go a bit deeper with calibration than I have recommended here on this channel. Because for 3D printing minis, out of all the resins I've tried, I've never had to go any deeper than changing the bottom layer exposure value, like we had to do here for bed adhesion, and normal layer exposure value. And whenever possible, I absolutely love to get calibration done and out of the way in a single print. But Derek actually recommends that if you don't get the perfect result on your boxes test straight away, to actually play with some other settings, specifically the lift speed and the light off delay. Which again, yeah, these are settings I've never felt the need to change. I did have to adjust lift height once, way back on my Photon S, because I had a particularly loose FEP on that one. Oh wait, no, it was the Mono X. Yeah, the Mono X I had to adjust the lift height on. But otherwise, like, yeah, speed, you know, some people like super fast speeds, like the whole vroom thing. Some people like to slow their speeds down. But for here on this channel, to get people up and running with resin 3D printing, miniatures specifically, and to have a good time with it, I've put the focus on just the normal layer exposure value. Because in my experience, yeah, the other stuff doesn't really come into play for us. But from speaking to Derek and from spending a bit of time going through his work and reading his literature that he's put together, it sounds like you can achieve dimensional accuracy and tensile strength based off of these pillars here on any resin if you do go that bit deeper and play with light off delay and lift speed. So I thought that's super interesting. It's not something I personally want to do. I just want to get up and running as quick as possible with the normal layer exposure value, and I'm happy to bias an exposure value slightly over to improve my chances of successful prints. And that's the thing as well, like you often can't tell the difference between 2 different prints in terms of detail with your naked eye when they're like within probably a quarter or maybe even half a second of each other in terms of exposure value. You just can't see that difference. So I always bias my exposure value higher to ensure I get successful prints. So I'm not chasing the nth degree of dimensional accuracy. I think maybe people who are engineers and have more demanding use cases for their 3D printers might be interested in this kind of thing. But in any case, I did want to try this out and have a look at it. So let's go through these now. So this one I'm guessing would be an underexposed result. Let's try the boxes. So we snap off the first little box and it should drop into the second box. Well, it's a snug fit, but it fits. And then we should be able to snap off the second box. Yep. And drop that into the third box. Which, yeah, again, it's a snug fit, but we got it in there. So that's cool. Let's look at number 2. And it looks like we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pillars. And my understanding is it's okay if some of them look a bit bent. That's not a big deal. And so if we snap off our first box, that should fit into the second box. Yep, this one actually fit better. This is at 2 seconds, I believe. And so then our second box should fit into the third box. So third one looks pretty similar to the second. We've got, again, what looks like 9 of the posts. There we go. It's a little bit fiddly, but we got it in. Yep, fits nicely. Let's take a look at number 4. And this looks about the same. Maybe a bit worse. Is this 8 posts, I think? Okay. Okay, it's a bit fiddly. I just dropped that one. Let's try the second box. It fits. Okay, let's look at number 5. Yeah, I'm not noticing too much difference between these. So this one would be 2.6 seconds, I believe we're up to. And at this point, it's a bit of a struggle to get that box in. Oh, there we go. I got it in. Yeah, we can do it, but it's definitely a bit tighter this time. Okay, so what have we learned? Well, a lot of these results looked remarkably similar. It's a little less obvious to me how we should define a success based off of this test versus the latest version of Cones of Calibration, which I've been really enjoying lately. Thematically as well, I really like that part because like it's got, you know, the sword, you pull the sword out and you stick it in the skull. It's very cool. But same sort of thing here with the boxes, where you put the boxes in and then you find the point where the boxes don't fit. That's cool. That makes a lot of sense. But it's just these. I'm not sure how I should be reading these exactly. Like we had 8 of them as early as, I believe, number 2. And this is our 2-second test. But then the boxes fit all the way up to number 5, which is the 2.6 second test. It is pretty damn snug. So probably 2.4 seconds is the best result. But yeah, it seems a little bit more convoluted to me. Please feel free to get in the comments. And Derek, if you're watching, please explain this for us all. It would be, yeah, cool to get some more info on this. I'm fascinated by what you're doing in regards to calibration. Like, I think this is very cool. The more people we have talking about calibration, the better. Because obviously a lot of people get into resin 3D printing, aren't even aware that that's a thing they should do. And I always try and point out on this channel, like, hey, if you're gonna like learn anything about 3D printing, at least please learn this one thing. There's this setting you have to change if you want to have a good time here. But yeah, I don't know. If I have to go deeper and print more exposure tests, I don't personally love that. I love just being able to bang this out in one go. That's why I rave so much about this machine having this multi-exposure test thing built into the firmware. It's fantastic. One print, it doesn't have to be perfect. If we're a bit overexposed, whatever. We're just printing minis. We can't see that difference anyway. Like, so let's just knock that out of the park, one go. But yeah, obviously with resin 3D printing, you can go a lot deeper on exposure if you want to, and that's great. But yeah, I think for the average person who just wants to get up and running quickly, printing miniatures to great success, yeah, I don't personally think it's necessary to go any deeper than normal layer exposure value. But yeah, cool test. I'm not sure it's for me personally. Let me know, which is your favorite calibration part and why? And if you are someone who's interested in gaining a deep technical knowledge of resin 3D printing, knowing it inside and out, I highly recommend looking into J3D Tech's stuff. And I'll leave links in the video description. He's got a YouTube channel and an absolutely excellent guide, just absolutely stuffed to the brim with everything you could ever want to know about all the settings and yeah, everything related to resin 3D printing. So do check out his stuff. Yeah, it's an absolute wealth of knowledge and I highly recommend it. Okay, let's move on. Based off of my results here, I'm gonna go with 2.5 seconds just because on the other machines I've printed this resin with, it's also been about 2.5 seconds. So it's whatever, ballpark, it works. All right, so let's print up some miniatures. Let's talk about some concerning stuff I've seen in the wild already with these printers. And yeah, we'll wrap up this video and I'll give you my final thoughts on the Saturn IV Ultra. What a saga this has been. Wow, check that out. First print, looks like a complete success. Now, it did get a little bit cold last night, and I didn't want this to fail, so I did put the heater in the back there. So that seems to have worked, but we will do a proper test later on in this video. Total print time, according to the display here, is 5 hours and 12 minutes, which is pretty cool if you consider like how big this print is. But again, like it doesn't really matter because it's actually about 10 hours later since I started this print because I went to bed and I slept in. So yeah, the speed was irrelevant basically. And I think most of the time for most people, speed will be irrelevant also. Now, who was it that I saw sanded their build? I think it was Geek Detour Because you see this build plate, it loves to hold on to resin at the very edges after it's been sitting for a few hours. And he like beveled and rolled off those edges with some sandpaper or like a sanding thing. So that was an interesting idea. Let's try and pop these off. Okay, I do wish this was a little bit sharper. It would be nice if it was easier to get in under the models better. I'm gonna switch to a razor because this will be easy to get in under these models. There we go. Nice. Yeah, nothing beats a sharp edge for print removal. Some people like to tell me that you should, just tune your burn-in and then they'll just pop right off. But goddamn, then you run the risk of failures if you ride that edge of success and failure with your burn-in layers. That is a setting that you absolutely always, in my opinion, want to be on the overcooked side versus the undercooked. It's better to have models stuck to your build plate at the end of a print than not at all, just because you wanted it to be a little bit easier to pop them off. Here we can see this build plate sucking at its job. I really dislike this build plate. Just look at it. Unbelievable. All right, well, it looks like all of our models here were printed really well and are supported at first glance excellently. And I'm currently running off my next print, so we'll have a look at some miniatures. This terrain comes to us from Fabricator's Lair, and this one here, this is Major Muffin, ladies and gentlemen. I love that name so much, Major Muffin. And these are actually rewards for becoming a member of the Once in a Six Side community this month, which I'll talk in more detail about soon when this next print finishes, and I'll show you all these great models. But for now, let's try and pop these supports off. Ooh, okay, a bit firm. So that's good. For terrain, I'll take that. Nice. That came away pretty good. Look at that. Fantastic. And this is epic scale terrain, by the way. There's this piece, this Gothic tower, and then there's also a cathedral, which looks very cool. I'm not going to print the cathedral today. We'll just do this one. But yeah, this is fantastic. And Fabricator's Lair does an entire set of this stuff. So if you wanted to build like a Gothic epic scale gaming table, Fabricator's Lair, they are the studio you are looking for. Now from Major Muffin, this little piece of terrain actually comes in multiple pieces. Let's try and pop this off. Oh, we got it. Okay, that had a lot of supports on it, but none of them were too big, so that was pretty okay. Yeah, for models like this, I think that's completely reasonable to support them like that, because you guarantee you get a print at the end, which is the main thing, you know? There's that next piece, and so that can actually be magnetized. There's little magnet holes, and so that can drop on there, and I think due to the nature of resin, these aren't actually going to line up very well. Yeah, there's not enough clearance for these, or the resin's warped too much. So maybe a slight redesign just to improve the clearance for this lid would be needed. But otherwise, this is looking pretty damn sweet. Comes with some different gun options. Las cannon, some kind of bolter. There's a little shield and some other bits and pieces. Yeah, overall, I'd say pretty great supports from both of these studios. Maybe use hot water for them, but yeah, can't complain. We got some successful prints. Very happy about that. So we got my next print running at the moment, and it just occurred to me that a machine can say it has a feature, but if we don't test the feature, does it really have the feature? So let's cut the power right now and see if recovery on power loss works, because that is a big selling point, in my opinion, for this printer. I have needed such a feature more than once in my time 3D printing. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna wait till this next layer finishes. And there we go, pulled the power. Reconnect, let's see what it says. Printing interrupted, continue printing or not? Continue printing. Build plates rising up. Yeah, it's gotta go all the way to the top to the homing sensor first. So hopefully you can see there nice and clearly our print so far, which is pretty cool. Looks like everything's adhering to the build plate nicely. Okay, and here goes. I can actually hear the layers releasing from the FEP. So I do believe it's working. Check this out. How good's that? We got some 75mm models on here and a bunch of minis. So yeah, this thing seems to be really good for smaller models, but for bigger ones it struggles. But yeah, I think the razor is going to be easier. Oh yeah, so much easier. So yeah, I think I will definitely make that video. One good thing though, I will say about Mr. Springy build plate is you don't have to worry about knocking it out of level when you're removing prints like this. So, what do you do when you've got no manual adjustment on your build plate and the auto leveling from factory isn't working? This is something I speculated could go wrong when I took a look at the Saturn IV, because it's an issue that we've seen before on self-leveling 3D printers. The Anycubic Mono M5S, when that came to market, not the M5S Pro, because they fixed it in that one, and I believe newer versions of the M5S have been shipping with the fix. But yeah, that original M5S shipped with no bolts on the build plate, so you couldn't loosen it off and manually adjust it. And what was happening was people were getting it from factory, and the play in the system from the auto leveling was insufficient to account for any deviation in the build plate's level. Hope that makes sense. And so you had users who were basically experiencing print failures as a result of having a non-level bed. And I have seen at least one account already of this happening now with these new Saturn IV build plates, because yeah, obviously these don't give you any manual adjustment, kind of, asterisk, because you can slightly adjust the level by loosening off the bolts on the top of this build plate. It's not how it's intended to be used, but you can do it. And shout out to Geek Detour for actually testing this. But yeah, take a look at this. This absolute lemon of a Saturn IV Ultra belongs to user Sir Ace, who I was chatting with, and he's agreed to let me share his experience here with you. And you can see here, he's having failures that are not attributed to insufficient burn-in layer or anything like that. They're very clearly a result of the printer not being level. And you can see here when he slides in a piece of paper for that very first layer, that there's tons of movement in that paper. And that's another thing too. Because they've given you an auto leveling build plate, they've removed any of the leveling settings from the firmware, so you can't home this build plate and check its level manually. The only way to do it is to start a print, and you've only got that first layer to get the paper in there and check. So that's, yeah, a big downside to this. This whole auto leveling thing, frankly, is kind of shit, if you ask me. It creates this terrible build plate experience that's just awful to work with. I hate this, frankly. I much prefer every other build plate I've ever worked with. This one takes the cake for just shit user experience. No question about it. And in a little while here, I bring up another printer, which I also say is the worst user experience. So just to clarify, when I'm talking about the Saturn IV, I mean worst user experience in regards to the post-processing of the prints. The amount of resin this thing holds onto, the dripping, the cleaning, especially, it's a pain in the ass to clean. I mean it in that regard. And the Nova 3D is the worst user experience in regards to like actually leveling the thing and getting it to work. So just felt the need to clarify that after stating that both were the worst user experience. And yeah, couple that with the fact that you're now completely reliant on this auto leveling system. And also the interplay with this tilt release mechanism isn't helping. Maybe the issue lies somewhere between the two. We don't know yet. I did try to find out, but I haven't heard anything back yet. But yeah, this is a problem I don't think had to be solved. You know, like leveling your build plate is so easy, it's so effortless, and you have to do it so infrequently too. Like once you level it, it's gonna stay level for months, possibly even years. So it's not, and not to mention the whole compression thing. I don't want to get into that, but I know Fohammer's going to do a video on that, so I'm keen to see that, and I think, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. And I'd be keen to hear Derek's take as well, J3D Tech, because I know from reading his literature, he's really big on calibrating that Z offset for your initial layers, which is not something you can do here. And the compression thing, did I just say I don't want to get into it? Whatever. So if you imagine your build plate when it's at rest is not perfectly level, it's like this, but then the leveling mechanism makes it do this. Well, what happens as it's printing? It slowly returns to this shape, and so your print ends up with this weird deformity in it. And the build plate doesn't have to be out of level. This is just a nice way to visualize how the compression issue is making the first I don't know, 10, 20 layers or so of your prints, just completely useless in terms of dimensional accuracy. The build plate could be totally level, but yeah, those first, who knows how many layers. The build plate's just being squished hard up against the FEP and LCD, and until those springs are fully relaxed, there's no space between the two and nothing actually printing with any kind of accuracy. That's the compression issue. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, I could probably keep complaining about this. I don't want to. I think I've made my point. Elegoo, I hope you abandon this, but then maybe it's worth it. Maybe on average, people struggle more to level. I don't know, maybe I'm in a minority who thinks leveling is the easiest thing in the world and it's not hard to get right. There are really bad manual leveling systems out there, don't get me wrong, like the Nova 3D stuff. If you saw my Whale 3 Ultra video, you know that was the worst user experience I've ever had with any resin 3D printer, and that was because of the leveling. So you can have bad leveling experiences, but God, if you just do the simple tried and true 4-bolt thing, or even the dual bolt spring-loaded ball joint, I personally am a big fan of that. I know some people aren't because it does fall out of level easier than the 4-bolt method, but it's the easiest to level, so in my opinion. Yeah, this, no one asked for it, I don't think. Did you? Did you ask for it? Tell me. It was you, wasn't it? You fucking did this. A couple of things I'd like to add here just quickly in regards to some stuff that I just mentioned that I think I should elaborate on a little bit. So if you're like me, buying resin 3D printers specifically for the use case of printing miniatures, don't worry about the compression issue thing and don't worry about calibrating your Z offset, because you're only ever going to be printing pre-supported models 100% of the time, no exception. Like you're not going to print any models directly on your build plate. And the reason that matters is because you don't care if your supports at the very beginning of the print get a little bit squished or warped or whatever. It doesn't matter. So long as the rafts, that's the bottom bit of your support, is adhering nicely to the build plate, which is your bottom layer exposure setting, in concert with a level build plate, then you're fine. So yeah, I just felt the need to clarify that because I know some people watching might think, oh, I can't buy this, or I can't buy a printer that has auto leveling if I can't tune my Z offset, or I don't want the compression issue. The reality is if you're printing pre-supported models like miniatures, this stuff does not affect you. You're fine, don't worry. And I said this in the Saturn 4 video, I'm gonna say it again here because it's worth repeating. If we're gonna have an auto leveling system, I really much prefer the Anycubic version, which instead of giving us the springy and compressible build plate, gives us the springy and compressible LCD. This is much better in my opinion, because then the build plate, which is the thing we are interacting with almost exclusively with our 3D printers, is just so much nicer to work with on that kind of system versus this one. But then the question is, can you have tilt release and auto leveling where the compression happens on the LCD side, not the build plate? Unsure. That's one for the engineers to solve. But yeah, maybe you can't have both, and then this is always going to be the trade-off, where if you want tilt release and auto leveling, you got to have a shit build plate. Which, if that's the case, I would rather just have tilt release and manual leveling if tilt release was my priority or preferred feature. Otherwise, give me auto leveling and a nice build plate. Yeah. So going back to this question, what do you do if you have a system like this that is self-leveling or self-zeroing, whatever you want to call it, and your prints are failing, like we saw on that other Saturn 4, so it's failing to auto-level? What do you do? There's a potential fix that we can try here, and my curiosity's got the better of me, so we're gonna do it. And it involves making an adjustment to our homing sensor. Because this machine, I believe, the way it works is it moves all the way from the homing sensor to the layer 0 position at the start of a print based on an exact predetermined move distance. So it knows when it hits that sensor, it has to move X amount of steps to get to where it needs to go. So therefore, I think all we have to do is just make sure that sensor gets triggered a little bit sooner, and then that fixed amount of distance should see our build plate make contact with the vat sooner and therefore compress that spring system that bit more. So let's give it a go. I began here by running a dry test by starting a print, and with the build plate in the layer 0 position, I can't move that paper around. There's obviously a little bit of compression happening to those springs, and you probably can't see it. There's basically no deflection at all on these bolts on the top. But keep this in mind. This is our control test. So now let's do the mod. and see what the difference is. So I took off the entire plastic housing for the enclosure of the printer, which is actually really easy to do. There's only 6 bolts on the inside on the very top deck near the LCD that you have to remove, and then 1 bolt on the very exterior at the back that you have to remove, and then the whole thing just lifts off. It's really easy. But you probably will want to disconnect your AI camera from the back of the machine first, because I forgot about that and I just yanked mine loose. The next thing I did is I removed the 4 bolts holding the carriage to the linear rails. And then to unthread the carriage from the Z-rod, for the printer to let you do that, you have to either unplug the sensor, which is glued in, or you can just do what I did and just sort of lift the Z-rod ever so slightly so that the little sensor gets cleared by the bar. That'll make more sense in a second here when you see this thing. Once you've got that carriage out, there's this little tab on the back, and this is what passes by the sensor and tells it that the printer has homed. So I took some sticky tape here. This is just electrical tape. And I tested that first on its own to see if it would trigger the sensor, which it did, which is awesome. So I then just literally just stuck some of this to that little tab to make it taller so it would trigger the sensor sooner. Putting the carriage back on is a little bit fiddly because there's this coily cable for the force sensor that you kind of have to just push back into that center rail. And if you're attempting to do this after power cycling the machine, you can actually just skip the little self-calibration thing that tries to auto-home at the start, or you can just stick something in the way of that sensor and make it think that it's homed before you go into the move settings and then start turning that rod. And then, yeah, it's just a matter of reinstalling the bolts to the little sliders on the linear rails, and you're good to go. And of course, the plastic housing goes back on super easy. But here we go, moment of truth. Is it gonna work? And abso-fucking-lutely, look at that. Look at the amount of deflection on those bolts now. They are sticking up super proud. So obviously this will make the compression issue a whole shitload worse. But again, if you're printing miniatures, you probably don't care about that. However, if you're printing with super thin rafts, this could be a problem because those rafts might not get printed at all. You might want to beef up your rafts, but otherwise there is a potential fix for you if you do have a Saturn IV Ultra or any squishy build plate like this. So there we go. I'm going to undo this mod and put this thing back together now. Let's take a quick look at some more cool models from Artificer's Mini. We've got Herald of Givia or something like that. Hang on, I'll put it on screen. Oh yeah. Amazing as ever with the supports. You know who this is. What a great sculpt. Thank you, Artificer's Mini. And a reminder, all the models, this one's still a bit wet because it's hollow. Yeah, a reminder, all the models that I'm showing you here are available this month for Once in a Six Side members. So if you want to become part of the community, you want to help fund this channel and help keep these videos coming and get some great STL rewards for your contribution, Artificer's Mini and these other talented artists here today have got your back. We also have, returning again to the channel, Tractor Minis. Look how cool this model is. And there is a whole pack of these so you can build them out however you want. They also come pre-posed. Super cool. I love how characterful Tractor Minis Chaos sculpts are. These are just so wonderful. Thank you, Tractor Minis. This little piece of terrain comes to us from Arcane Whiskers. Look at that. Beautiful. And this is like a barrel, oops, with a little bit of a flame that sits on top. Very nice. Good job on the tolerance on that too. That's perfect. Hell yeah. Thank you, Arcane Whiskers. This is absolutely sick. This comes from Imp3D Sion. Imp3D Sion has also been supporting the channel for a number of months now with these donations. Thank you, Imp3D Sion. You are a talented demon. So probably want to use the hot water method for Imp3D Sions, but given we're using a pretty decent resin here, I'm not too worried about breaking anything. Yeah, maybe a touch over-supported. We'll need to do a little bit of cleanup here, but that's not too bad. There's the sword for that model. Ooh, I can't get it off. Shit. Oh no, I broke it. Damn. Have I mentioned pre-supporting miniatures is like the hardest job in the world? That's okay. Better luck next time. Returning as well this month is Dungeons and Dreadnoughts with this absolutely amazing collection of assassin warrior dudes. Absolutely love these models. These are so great. Thank you, Dungeons and Dreadnoughts. Lucas with a C is back, and Lucas has given us a whole incredible builder of these horrible, ghoulish looking creatures. And I mean horrible in like the best possible way. And these supports here, to be really nice. Good job on the supports. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different poses for this one. Ah, look at that. Just drop those arms right on. That's sick. And there's a head here as well. Where's that head? Oh, I love that so much. Can you see that okay? Look how cool that is. Thank you, Lucas with a C. And then, I'm so excited for this. Joining us this month is the one and only Atlan Forge. If you've been 3D printing miniatures for any length of time, you probably know about Atlan Forge. They do the coolest Space Marine sculpts. And, beautiful support work. Absolutely wonderful. And this is like a whole kit of Terminators, which is just absolutely insane. Look at this power claw, man, with the sword on it. Chainsword. That's fantastic. Look at this thing. Look at the detail on that. And then like the pauldrons. Look at this. That's a pauldron, right? Or is that a different part? There's shoulder pad. Is a shoulder pad a pauldron? Is a pauldron a shoulder pad? Let me know. But yeah, look at this. Insane. Supports are epic. Missile launcher. There's the torso. And so let me get this guy together real quick and I'll show you this model. It's so cool. So if you want to get all of these models and a bunch of other models too, this isn't everything. There's actually a shit ton of STL files you're going to get if you come join the Once in a Six Side membership, because there's a whole welcome pack that is just overflowing with cool models, and those are available year round. So at whatever point in time you're watching this video, if you'd like to come join and help these videos be a thing and get yourself some cool models, you can absolutely get all the stuff in the welcome pack. Hopefully there will be some epic monthly exclusives at the time you're watching as well. But if you're watching right now, at the time this video has come out, and for the remainder of July 2024, yeah, you can get all this great stuff. It's seriously insane value, and I can't thank these artists enough. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. We've got the Discord server as well. The Discord server is great. We've got such a good community forming there around 3D printing and this channel. And yeah, I'm eternally grateful for all the support. So thank you, everyone. Let's now get these queued up and dive into our cold weather tests. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. All right, so I took the Saturn IV Ultra outside to my outdoor laundry, same place I did the cold weather tests for the previous video. And the idea here is to run the first print with no heating at all, and hopefully force a failure so that we can then install the heater, try it again, and see if it solves the issue and we get a successful print. So I did that. I ran our first print. We've got the Sunlu ABS-like in there, and it was about 10 or 11 degrees C, so not super cold, but pretty nippy. And god damn it, Sunlu. This print turned out perfect, so kind of frustrating. I feel like if I can't force a failure, then I can't really show you whether the heater is effective or not, and anything I have to say about it is just, it's hot air. So, much to my chagrin, I had to empty out the vat and switch to another resin. So, hey, that's still a useful piece of information, I guess. That Sunlu ABS-like is pretty damn good, even in colder temperatures. Affiliate links down below. So I went and grabbed a resin that I'm pretty confident will fail in cold temperatures. This is Frozen Aqua 8K. I really dislike this resin quite a lot. It smells pretty bad. It's brittle. The only thing it's got going for it is that it looks nice, unpainted. But yeah, got this stuff installed in the Saturn, took it back outside, sliced the models again with a profile for this resin, which I did calibrate for the Saturn IV, and it should be the same, because they both use the exact same light source and LCD. And once again, the temperature I think was like 10 or 11 degrees, and I was very happy to see this print failed spectacularly. So the next thing I did is I went and grabbed that heater, got that installed on the left side there behind the vat and in front of the ventilation port, which I do have blocked off. I guess that's one of the big downsides of a blower heater, is you can't actively vent the machine at the same time you heat it. And for this final print with the heater installed, I let it warm up for a couple hours before starting the print, and it was able to heat up the Saturn to 21 degrees. So not quite the full 25, but hopefully it's good enough. And when I came back and checked on this print, it was perfect. I couldn't see any build plate adhesion issues or layer adhesion issues. No delamination at all. These parts look great. These are some models from the welcome pack. Some stuff, a dwarf. We got a dwarf here from Artificers Mini. There's an orc from Smuggler Boutique. And this is a new one from Lucas with a C. We got this Custodes here, which is really cool. But a bit of feedback for Lucas. This model's a little on the heavy side for the pre-supports. They left a lot of scarring, and I had to spend some time doing cleanup on this guy. But otherwise, pretty good. pretty damn cool. So thank you, Lucas with the C, Smuggler Boutique, and Artificer Mini. You guys rock. And yeah, that's the heater. So it works. You might prefer another heater over it just because it's limited to 25 degrees C, whereas the other blower heaters can get up to 40 degrees C, and you have a bit more control over them. But yeah, at least for this environment, it works well. So no complaints there. All right, so my final thoughts on the Saturn IV Ultra. It's a good printer. Parts look great. It's got a swingy door. I like that. The firmware's a huge improvement over previous generations and every other printer. I'm so happy to see another manufacturer give us exposure calibration tools in the firmware. I've been crying out about it forever, and it's just to finally see it happen is, yeah, really satisfying for me. It's a great implementation too. It's very versatile. It's potentially more useful if you want to go deeper with your calibration. You can really narrow down the increment between each exposure value, so you can get really precise if you want to. Again, I've always found that quarter-second interval from Anycubic more than enough for our resins that we're using here for miniatures. But for me, it always comes down to user experience, and I can't help but feel like I'm having a bad user experience with these new Saturns. I love the swingy door. That's good because we don't end up with this whole other box that has to be put somewhere whenever we're using the machine. That's nice. But that build plate, honestly, it feels like such a big downgrade over every other printer. The post-processing of it's just awful, and you really do interact with your build plate more than anything else on your 3D printer. So it kind of makes or breaks the user experience more than any other part of it. Exposure calibration tools are really nice on the front end when you're first getting set up because it makes it easy to dial in whatever resin you want to use. And that can also be good in the long term as well if you like to switch between different resins. But yeah, that thing you're going to be interacting with day in, day out is that build plate. And yeah, this one, you're going to have to bring some extra patience with you for this one. That's for sure. Just take your time, be careful with it. And yeah, I think if you bought this printer, you'd be pretty happy with it, especially for the price. If it's still $400 at the moment, that's great. It's hard for anything else to compete with that for the amount of features you're getting with this thing. But again, I would warn you, you're enrolling to be a beta tester on that tilt release mechanism. It's cool, it's faster. Are you going to see the benefit of it? Most of you probably won't. I think it's a small subset of resin 3D printer users who will really benefit from the faster speed. But again, it is cool that you can use any resin at speed with this printer and that feature. But me personally, I would love to see tilt release and manual leveling. I think that would be the better user experience. And possibly also the better experience for those who are more concerned with the fine control over their machines, particularly people who are printing directly on the plate and not using pre-supports, because that is a thing. It does exist. But yeah, neither of these Saturn IV printers are replacing my daily for me. Let's put it that way. And I think that's a helpful way to look at the printers that come through here. Like currently with FDM printers, the V400 has been my daily and my go-to. That printer's just really, really impressed me, and I love using it. And so every other FDM printer that comes through here is basically competing to beat that thing and dethrone it. And it's the same with resin printers. My favorite has been the Anycubic Mono M5S Pro, and everything that comes through here is basically trying to dethrone that as my daily resin 3D printer. And unfortunately, neither of these Saturns have done it. So maybe if that's relevant at all for you and helps you with your purchasing decisions, there's that. Yeah. Oh, the camera. I should probably talk about the camera. Yeah. I made zero use of the camera at all. I think I enabled the time lapse for one of them. I'll see if I can find that. If I can find it, I'll play it now on the screen. What does it look like? Is it good? Probably not. I've seen other people's time lapses from the Saturn. See, this is another thing. In regards to this camera, like I said earlier, it's not for me. I don't care if resin printers have them or not. And so yeah, I've kind of just forgotten to even look into it at all for this review. So this isn't a review. This is a first impressions video. All right. Do us a favor and subscribe if you want. Actually, no, don't worry about that. Use my affiliate link. If you're gonna buy this printer, there will be an affiliate link down below. I'll also leave affiliate links to some other stuff that I really like. What else? Oh, and of course, come join me on Patreon or buy me a coffee. We got a great little community. It's a lot of fun. And best of all, you will sleep like a baby at night knowing you are helping Once in a Six Side produce really long-winded videos about 3D printing. I don't know how long this video is yet, but we'll see. I personally love long videos, and I go out of my way to find them when I want to find something to watch. Maybe you're the same. Let me know. But there will also be some tightly edited algorithm tickling creations coming soon. What are we doing this month? Can't even remember. Coming soon. All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.